Hello, welcome to the very first module of the Back2School Masterclass. I want you to know that this course that you're taking is coming also from hindsight view of a 10-year working experience in mainstream education. We've worked in mainstream education between 2008 and to date. And part of what we've done in schools is to work with teachers to see how we can improve communication and increase engagement in classrooms. During the course of our work, one of the things that has stood out for us is that so many talented school children come to school without support from home. There's essentially no one at home helping them organize themselves for their work. There's no one helping them believe in themselves. There's no one helping them stay accountable. So parents essentially pay school fees, drop them off at school, and ask for the magic to begin. Over the years, we've seen that the magic doesn't quite work like that. There are things that only parents can do for children for them to excel. There are things that only a consistent support system where there is love, where there is individual attention. There are things that can only be achieved in those kind of relationships. And I usually say this casually. Every day, a school teacher has a fixed time to spend with children of different personalities, temperament, moods, and guess what? They have a timeline on everything they need to teach within a certain time frame. As we continue to work on them to improve their engagement and communicate better and create a more empowering atmosphere for children, we're finding that there is still so much limit to what the teacher can do. So the Back2School Masterclass is like putting some power back in the hands of parents and telling them, if you struck this chord and the teacher struck that chord and the child made this adjustment, we'll all get better outcomes. So we're starting the Back2School Masterclass with Module 1, which is about setting school year goals that work. Again, my name is Irene Bangwell. I am co-founder of NOSC, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to class. So where do I begin? I like to ask if you can remember a time in which you set goals some time past. It could be personal goals, business goals, parenting goals, relationship goals. Can you remember a time like that? I think the average adult set goals at the beginning of every year. We call them New Year resolutions. But when we look back, we find out that in so many ways, we don't bring to birth the things we set those goals for. We don't achieve our goals like we want to. So maybe the first thing I would ask for us to just put down in our notepads is to think about the goals you set before. What are some reasons why you never met them? Or the ones you were able to achieve? What are some things that you did that made it possible for you to meet those goals? What was different about the journey to meeting goals and the journey of not meeting some goals? What are some things you picked out of that journey? That would help you see that there are usually right ways or right steps to taking certain goals or setting or setting goals or achieving goals holistically. And you also find that there are times that some approaches don't work. So when it comes to school goals, we're going to start with talking about the first step to setting the right school goals. There are many conversations around the SMART acronym, that you have to be specific, it has to be measurable, and so on and so forth. It has to be achievable, realistic, and time-bound. But today we're going to be just focusing on realistic. For us, it is the priority word for us in setting school goals. We want to talk about it being realistic. While we're focusing on realistic, all the other timelines, all the other indicators, that it has to be specific, measurable, achievable, and time-bound, they still count. But for the purpose of this class, we're going to focus primarily on that school goals have to be realistic goals. So how do we measure a goal that is realistic? How do we define that a goal that we've set is realistic? That's what we're going to be looking at today. So the first thing for us about what makes a school goal realistic is that it needs to fit into the framework of the school's curriculum for your child's class. What does this mean? What kind of school did you sign up your children for? Did you sign up for Montessori education? Did you sign up for the early years framework? Are your children in a British curriculum, American curriculum, a Nigerian curriculum school? Are your children signed up for an accelerated Christian education curriculum school? Why are we throwing the curriculum out there? It basically, essentially, tells you what to expect in a certain atmosphere and what not to expect in a certain atmosphere. So we find that many times parents, we kind of mix it up together. You see something in a British school, but you're in a Nigerian curriculum school, but you want the Nigerian curriculum school to do it. It doesn't quite work like that. And I think as we make school decisions about where we're taking our children to, it's important for us to start asking questions about, what is your curriculum? What does it entail? Can I have a sense of the scheme of what my child will be studying this term? If your child is not designed to read 3-4 letter words this term, there's no point putting it on the go unless you plan to teach them at home. And then you still need to think about, how old is my child? Are they yet ready for this? And all of that. So the first thing to ask is, these goals I'm setting, is it something that the school that my child is in offering? Are they offering it? Are they offering my child's school? Are they offering what my expectations are? The second thing is that in setting goals, we must always consider our children's individual pace. All children learn at different pace and a different way and all of that. And certain things contribute to their pace. So it's usually important to not give two children in the home the same goal. We must always take into consideration each child's individual pace. And this is not to say you're a slow learner, I want you to catch up. It's about ensuring that we're setting goals that steady children's progress, meaning a child is making progress, but it is not necessarily in comparison to the second or the third child or other children. The third thing that you need to take into consideration to make the goal realistic is, the goal is not supposed to exasperate the child. So your child had a D last term in a subject. Why are you shooting for an A? Give them something around a C and a B. I know the thing of aim for A, and when you fall, if you don't meet up, you set up at B. But I'm saying that our goal is to watch the child grow. The child had a D. Let's start with a C in test work. And when we see that C in test work and homework and assignment, and then we move on to say, okay, let's move it to exams as well. So it has to be progressive. It doesn't have to exasperate the child. The fourth part I really, really love is, when we're setting school goals for our children, we need to spell out what we're going to do to support them to achieve these goals. We need to clearly spell out what our responsibilities are going to be in the process of our children achieving these set goals. Meaning, we don't set the goals and tell them to go ahead, and we don't say what we're going to do. What are we going to do to keep them accountable? What are we going to do to help douse the tension when they're pressured at school? What role are we going to play other than paying their school fees or hiring a lesson teacher to help them get through school? Those, by the way, are also very important contributions that we're making to our children's education. And finally, we don't need to say at the end of this school year, I want you to be best student. I like that part. I want us to be able to do that. But I want us to be able to set immediate goals, short-term goals, medium goals, and long-term goals. So immediate goals is like weekly. This week you're going to do this. Short-term, this midterm, medium term, at the end of each term, long-term at the end of the school year. So we make progressive, very progressive goals. We're setting the goals progressively. We're also setting the goals in such a way that we can have indicators that we're looking out for weekly. Otherwise, we wake up sometime and we find that the year has passed. We set those big, beautiful goals, but there was no means of measuring milestones and even following up to evaluate if milestones have been achieved. The second part that the second thing we want to talk about making goals effective is that the goals have to be comprehensive. I know when we talked about goal setting, everyone just jumps at the idea that I'm going to tell my children I want to say all A's at school. But we find that different things contribute to whether a child will excel at school. We find that a child's self-belief is important. How enthusiastic they are about learning is important. The academics in itself is important, and then their general behavior, be it at home or at school, has a way of interfering with mainstream learning. So for starters, let's talk about setting self-belief goals. We need to understand our child's belief about their capacities as well as certain subjects and teachers. Many of our children are not doing well at school because they don't believe in themselves. Things have happened in the past. They have certain limiting beliefs about themselves or about how they can perform in certain subjects. For instance, mathematics. And sometimes when parents brandish the fact that they weren't good in math, I think sometimes it makes the children think that they too won't be good in math. I usually like to say that my experience doesn't need to be my child's experience on any subject. We just set the principles in place and watch them build from there. So some kids are not doing well in school because they have a wrong belief about their capacities, about certain subjects, and about teachers. I once heard a teenager say, when children don't do well at school, blame the teachers, because when they don't perform well, teachers demoralize them. So I can assure you that while that sounds really nice, sometimes it's amazing what children call demoralizing. It's amazing what, especially when they're in their teen years, it's amazing what they call demoralizing. Maybe challenging them and say, you can do this. Why did you do this? This is so poor. While we're working on helping teachers give feedback in an empowering way, we want to also build our children's capacity to see the intentions when they get those kind of feedback so that they don't begin to doubt their capacities. The second thing we need to know about self-belief is that we need to understand the misconceptions that they have and articulate how to overcome them. So where did your child get this belief they have about their own capacities from? What happened to them? What did they hear someone say? We want to get to know what they are and help them overcome them. So there's a teacher they always run into trouble with, and they think that is because they're not good enough or the teacher hates them. That's a misconception. We want to clearly help them articulate where they made a mistake or where the misconception came from so that they can make corrections and start working to overcome them. We also need to set goals that empower their beliefs. So when you're setting goals for your child, the goal should not just be that they're going to have an A. The goal should be that part of the goal is I'm going to believe in myself. I believe in myself. I can excel. I learn easily. I mean, you need to build in those kind of goals for them to say, even though sometimes self-belief goals, you're the one setting to say, over this period, I want to see my child's thinking and belief about themselves. I want to see it evolve over time. So we need to set goals that empower their beliefs and helps them navigate through their misconceptions. One of the tools that I use in my home to deal with self-belief is affirmations. So I have my children say affirmations. One of the very lines I use in my home is, learning is easy for me. So I get them to say that every morning as part of their bulk of other sentences that they say every morning. And I think it has a way of readying them for school day, school work, school task. What they say to themselves, their mind come to believe, and then they swing action behind whatever it is that they believe in. So here's an interesting thing. Whenever a new academic year approaches, the most prevalent problem parents and teachers encounter is the lack of motivation from students. I mean, this is understandable. 6 weeks holiday, we've been having fun watching movies, sleeping in, no homework. And if we went for summer school, it's not as tense or as demanding as mainstream school. So we find that just when school is resuming, kids begin to lose motivation to get back to school, which is what's going to be happening over the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to be showing us other angles that we're going to look at in setting goals. And this quote ushers us into the conversation. Are our children motivated for school? Whether it's after a long vacation or just generally, are they enthusiastic about their learning experience? So let's talk about the business of building enthusiasm. In this section, we're going to be looking at intrinsic motivation, extrinsic motivation, and learning behavior. What does enthusiasm entail? Motivation to learn. The child is excited to learn. They want to learn. Students can be intrinsically motivated when they love the content they're working on, meaning that they enjoy what it is they're working on. Usually when children are intrinsically motivated, there's no pressure. They're eager. They come out, they do what they want to do and all of that. So sometimes we find children who are very motivated about sport. They may not be excited about other things, so you may be following them up to do other things. But when it comes to sport, they go out of their way. They're proactive, they take initiative, they show responsibility, and that's because they're intrinsically motivated. Students are extrinsically motivated if there are rewards and tokens for studying seemingly uninterested things. So you find most of your children's schoolwork, the total experience, you find that your children are excited about some other things and they're not excited about the other things. So you see that subjects that they perform better in are most likely to be subjects that they are genuinely interested in. So before you set goals about things they're not interested in, you need to talk. What is the reason why they're not interested in certain subjects, certain materials, certain activities, and all of that? So you don't set a goal without even finding that my child doesn't want to learn this material, right? You have to make that happen. Then finally, we need to look at attitude towards schoolwork when they feel connected to uninterested. Attitude towards schoolwork they feel connected to, or when they're uninterested in. So we need to look. Enthusiasm helps us see what's the attitude to schoolwork essentially. Do they feel connected to this material? Are they interested in this material? And then through this attitude towards schoolwork, you see how much time they're willing to invest in certain things and how much effort they're willing to put into certain learning materials. So your child comes home with homework and they're not enthusiastic about it. Or you have to follow up. What it means is that they're not interested in that material. And for you to set a goal in that department, you need to start with looking for means to build their motivation. And sometimes it will include giving them rewards and tokens. So an important enabler of enthusiasm or motivation is genuine understanding of the child. Before setting the goal, you're supposed to know whether your child is interested in learning that subject. And you don't have the mind that you're going to cut them off, that they won't study this material anymore. You're just going to have to find creative ways to make them interested in that material. And I'll show you some of them in a bit. So what are some approaches we can take to build our children's enthusiasm? So here's the thing. We need to profile our children's learning style, interest, talent, and abilities. Enthusiasm, whether it's intrinsic or extrinsic, tells us things about our children. We're not supposed to beat them up because they don't want the material. We were supposed to sit down and find out why they're not interested in the material and then help them build some new thinking around the subject matters they're not comfortable with. We're supposed to make real life connections with what content they're learning at school, connected to their interests and why they're studying a material. So your child doesn't like biology, but maybe they love gym. They love going to the gym. They love working out. Help them make a connection between what they're learning at school, relevance to real life, and connect it back to something they're interested in. That way they begin to approach that material from a more holistic point other than I'm studying this for my grades. We need to provide rewards and tokens for build up of build up of interest in activities in those study areas they don't find interesting. So let me give you an example. Your child doesn't like biology. You say, okay, if you finish your homework and you can read 3 hours for it this week, you might get a movie ticket. You should get a movie ticket at the end of the month. But the other part is don't reward them with things they're not interested in. Don't reward them with things they're not interested in. Let me just share this story. So I went to this dance camp a few weeks ago, and some teenagers didn't want to come out to camp, and so they were punished by locking them in the dorm. And I just smiled and said, you didn't punish them. They wanted to stay back in the dorm. So to reward our children, well, we need to find out what gives them pleasure and what makes them uncomfortable. So sometimes the reward or the token could be giving something or withdrawing a privilege so that they can, adjust to studying that material that they don't find interesting. Another thing we do to build our children's enthusiasm is our commitment and consistent support to their learning journey is important. We don't show up at the end of the term and tell them what we expected of them, right? We do our best. We do our best, our very best, to check them on a weekly or once in 2 weeks basis so that they see that we're genuinely interested in their learning material. And usually I always say this, whenever you're creating the goals, there has to be something for everyone to do to contribute. Create the goals together, sit down together and work out what the goals should be. Agree on the importance of the goal. Have a buy-in as you're talking about the goals. And then give everyone a role, including yourself. That way your children know you're really serious about this. Then I want to just share this quick tip. When it's almost time for resumption, we're supposed to throw in back to school transition activities. These kids have been out of school for almost how many weeks? It's so easy for them to lose track of what it is they learned, and usually they're going to struggle at the beginning of the school year. So why don't you, over the next 3 days before they go back to school, say, all right, let's go through your note, let's see what's inside there, let's go over it together, let's read what did this mean, just to refresh their memory and start prepping them back into the school mood. So academic goals that work. So there are learning goals, there are growth goals, and there are grade goals. So what do these three mean? What does it take, even in the first instance? What does it take to have an effective academic goal? It means that we're going to be tracking whether our child is learning at all. This is what makes up learning goals. Learning goals is my child even learning? Sometimes children go on and on and on and on, and then it's during exams we find out that this child lost it in the 3rd week. Or this child started struggling with concept in the 5th week, connected with some in the 6th, and then lost it again in the 8th week. So every week we're supposed to find out if our children are learning, and we find out by conversations. Are they struggling with homework that they're being given? If they're struggling with homework, it means they didn't quite get a concept, and we can walk them through whether they're still practicing over and over again to make sure they improve. And then also, an effective academic goal must encompass whether a child is making improvement, no matter how little. These are growth goals. The first one is the child is learning. The second one is the child is improving. Those are growth goals. And then thirdly, we now have a concise target, end of term or end of year score per subject, while accommodating the fact that children's grades don't come just during exams. We're working with our children to help them understand that homework, project, test, assignment all add up to your final score at the end of the school term. I have found that for older children like teenagers, helping them know that your grade didn't come the day you started writing exams. A good portion of it already came through your homework, your project, your preparedness to write tests and performance on the test, and how you do all your assignments. Some form of scores are already accumulating for you. So when you're articulating your academic goal, make sure there are goals to ensure they're learning. Make sure there are goals to ensure they're growing and improving in areas they were not doing so well, and you're able to track them. And then thirdly, make sure there's a precise goal at the end of the term, but we're also showing them that big goal at the end starts with homework, project, test, and the completion, prompt, submission, and completion of assignment. So what are behavioral goals that work, right? Every time we hear behavior, parents think that, yes, I'm going to discipline them and all of that. We're going to look at that in a bit. But we found that it takes behavior for children to adhere to what we've accepted as what we're working towards for this school year. So we need to look at how we can prep our children to be in the right frame of mind, the right conduct, so that they can see their goals come to pass. So here we're going to be looking at making connections, setting standards, and effective discipline. So what makes a behavioral goal work? Behavior expectations begin with forging a relationship where the two-end channel of communication is open and accepting. There is trust in the relationship. Children who are so harassed at home may have struggle fitting into school pressure. That means that pressured at home, pressured at school, it's not difficult for them to snap. So when we're talking about connections, we're saying parents need to have a healthy, mutually rewarding relationship between them and their children. That means everyone looks forward to seeing the other, and we kind of are connected, There's friendship, there's trust, there's rapport. That's the first thing. That's for us where parents should begin. You need to make the effort to have a relationship with your children as they go back to school. And then there should be standard of behavior, which are clearly understood and are mutually acceptable. You don't want to tell your children you want them to behave well. You need to break it down. What are the standards of behavior? I want you to be at school on time. I don't ever want to get a call that your homework didn't come in on time. You need to have those kind of conversations and essentially let your children know what the acceptable behavior is. And when you're talking about standards, there has to be conversations so that your children understand you and you're on the same page. Consequences of misbehavior need to be predetermined and accepted as fair. When our children believe that we are fair to them, then our journey is halfway done. We're already on the same page. And parents steadily need to model the ideal belief, the ideal value, and the ideal behavior system they're demanding of the child. So you don't want to be telling your child one thing and you're doing the other. It's conflicting and it often leads to misbehavior. However, we cannot forestall misbehavior. In the event of misbehavior, parents need to enforce discipline consistently and without display of hate and intense emotions. Yes, no intense emotion. If your child misbehaved, we need to walk through what they've done, stick with what we already agreed would be the consequence for misbehavior, and we need to do this without any power tussle, without display of hate, without any intense emotion. In summary, goals must take into consideration school curriculum, your child's individual pace, must not be overwhelming, and there has to be, in specific terms, how we plan to support our children as parents. Goals work best when they are comprehensive and take into consideration every aspect of a child's life, because schoolwork can be influenced by other aspects of their life, from their self-concept, motivation, and their behavior. So that does it. Do you have any questions? Please drop in the comment section in the forum where you're taking this class.